Hey guys, so I went through a couple of my old videos and I'm kind of combining them together. So this is going to be kind of a big compilation of all the people I've collected that knew Bryan Kohberger, either childhood friend, classmate, student, just anything I collected like 2 years ago when he was arrested and people started coming out and being interviewed and talking about Bryan, either what they thought of him or there's a few people that were his students tell their experience of what he acted like after the murder compared to what he acted like before the murder. That's kind of interesting. And just, yeah, people's stories about Bryan and what they know about him, whether it be an old friend talks about who he is or what he said to them. There's some neighbors, it's kind of interesting. I had made a few videos where I put it all together. Well, now I took those videos and I'm just going to make one big video of them all together. So here it is.
Mr. Kohberger indicated that Bryan was acting normal and not out of character on the drive back from Washington.
Monroe County Public Defender Jason Labar represented Kohberger at his extradition hearing and has spent time with his parents and two older sisters.
The family want the general public to know that Bryan is a caring son and brother.
Kohberger and his sisters grew up in a small town in the Pocono Mountains. His father was a maintenance worker and his mother worked in the school system.
Okay, now let's get into the people that not only know Bryan Kohberger, but those that have come forward and said he either made strange comments to them or acted differently after the killings. First, we have a neighbor of Kohberger's who spoke with CBS News. Now, this neighbor claims that only a few days after the killings, when all of us had very limited information about the crime, Kohberger allegedly, quote, asked if this neighbor had heard about the murders, and then Kohberger allegedly said, quote, yeah, it seems like they have no leads. Seems like it was a crime of passion.
Her mom calling to break the news.
And she said the person they arrested was Bryan Kohberger. And immediately I freaked out, naturally. I went back inside work and I called about 8 of my friends because it was terrifying. It was a shock because there's literally 7 billion people in this world and I know him. I was friends with him. Like, that's terrifying.
Arntz lives in Virginia Beach, but grew up in the Poconos and attended Pleasant Valley High School. She tells us she became friends with Bryan Kohberger through her younger brother during their time in school.
We just hung out and talked, and that's what it was. It wasn't anything crazy, just a typical friendship. I didn't want to think about what even happened out there. I just want the families to have clarity. I want them to have some type of just answers to questions that they don't have. And I know that we won't get those answers or they won't get those answers until they actually hear from him. And the police release that information. And it's just, I want them to have clarity and I want them to be able to have peace after all this is said and done.
Kohberger grew up in eastern Pennsylvania's Pocono Mountains, where his father was a maintenance worker. His mother worked in the school system. He has 2 older sisters, Melissa and Amanda. And back in 2011, Amanda, now a school counselor, appeared in the low-budget slasher film 2 Days Back about a group of young students viciously murdered by a serial killer. I actually have a clip of a movie called Lonesome. It's like a short film or something. It's only like a couple minutes long, but she's actually in that movie too, Bryan's sister. Well, it's like 7 minutes long, almost 8 minutes long. And then, of course, she's in this slasher movie called 2 Days Back. The short movie's called, or the short whatever it is called Lonesome. I'll just play like a little small clip of it because I'm not going to play the whole thing.
Jake, wait!
What?
Get back in the car.
Huh?
Because I want to drive you to where you live.
No, it's okay. I like the walk.
No, it's not okay. Don't you get it?
What?
Jake, we've been together for 3 months and you're just so foreign to me.
I told you a lot of things. There's not really much to know.
Yeah, but, I never met your family. I never slept in your bed. How am I supposed to trust you if you don't show me those things?
Look, if I could show you, I would. But I can't.
You won't show me?
If I would, I just can't.
Doesn't even matter.
We can work through this.
I don't even know you, Jake.
Bryan was really funny. He wasn't outgoing at all. But he also wasn't shy.
Bree, who asked us not to use her last name, says she met Kohberger in high school when he was an average student with only a few close friends. In his yearbook photo, the caption says Kohberger aspired to be an Army Ranger.
However, he was an overweight kid, so he did get bullied a lot.
But all that changed, says friend Casey Arntz, when in his senior year, Kohberger lost about 100 pounds.
It was after that weight loss that a lot of people noticed a huge switch in him. My brother has since come out to say that even though they were friends, Bryan bullied him. He would put him in like chokeholds and stuff like that.
Bree claims that's also when Kohberger started using heroin.
You just saw him becoming more self-destructive.
Casey says she last saw Kohberger in 2017, when it appeared that he was sober and focused on his new passion, criminology. Bree says many are now left wondering.
Where did it go wrong? What happened?
Mom called me. I was leaving for lunch. Picked up the phone. She asked me if I knew about the Idaho murders.
Casey Arntz knew Kohberger's name long before the national headlines.
Then literally said, Bryan Kohberger. Saw his mugshot and my stomach just went, whew, like it dropped because that was him.
Casey, who now lives in Virginia Beach, is born and raised in Pennsylvania. As a high school student, Casey shared a friend group with her younger brother, a friend group that included Bryan.
Yeah, I knew Bryan through my brother and my other friend that lived up the road from us. Probably haven't really stopped shaking since Friday. It took a lot for me to calm down that day.
Casey doesn't consider Kohberger the closest of friends, but close enough where she still remembers the times he and her brother would come over to her family's home.
Bryan was generally over like every week, every weekend, maybe every other week, but it was always with them.
After posting a TikTok about the connection, Casey has been flooded with calls from media outlets hoping she'll share her story. Casey admits she doesn't have the details that'll change the course of the case, but she's choosing to share what she can in hopes it provides some kind of insight.
7 billion people in the world, and it just happens to be someone I used to be friends with.
Casey joins us now live from Virginia. Casey, Happy New Year. Thank you for deciding to talk to us and doing some reporting for us of your own with people from his past.
Of course, I'm glad to be here.
So as you scrub your memories and talk to other people, what now sticks out to you that you think is of the most relevance as perspective for people to know about this person?
Personally, what I'm finding out from former friends and former classmates is that, Bryan was bullied when he was younger. He was an overweight kid. When I personally knew him, he was always good to me. Now, over the years, that has changed. I know going into his senior year, he lost a lot of weight. It was then I hear that he might have become the bully. I was not there personally to see that. However, looking back at it, knowing how he knows my brother, knowing now how he knows my other friends, I wouldn't put it past him because my brother has come out and said that he was bullying him when he was friends with him. I don't know if that's a lot on his character. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's just insight into what this guy is about at a formative time in his life, which of course is high school, and he's only 28, so it's not like, he's my age or something. So this is a formative time. Also, for sure that he had addiction issues and profound ones. We're not talking about vaping, that's bad enough, but this was a heroin addict. He says he went to rehab, and you had experience with him using you to try to get drugs, right?
Yes, he did use me, and I didn't know at the time that he was using me to drive him to get heroin until probably a couple of days afterwards. It triggered me in a way because I didn't know that I could have been put in such a compromising position from him. But yeah, he definitely struggled with heroin addiction in high school.
One of the reasons that addicts are sometimes pejoratively referred to as fiends is because they can be very devious in finding ways to get drugs. That's what you experienced. But sometimes it's not just the addiction, it is character. And you're saying through your brother and others, the idea that he would want to trick somebody, that he would want to play a game on somebody and have them believe things, or that he could get away with convincing people of things, was part of who this guy was.
Yes. And from my experience, I never saw it firsthand, but my brother definitely has. Apparently he was belittling my brother. He was making him, just seem kind of stupid and slower. And Bryan always had to be the smartest person in the room when he was with my brother. It was like he was undermining him and just putting him down. And my brother cut ties with him because of this, because it got too much of a torment for him.
Now, look, we got to let the process play out, but it is already, I can tell you, with well over 20 years experience, very unusual that somebody who did nothing wrong says nothing. Now, people can say, well, that's the right way to play the system, and he is a criminologist, and that's what. But most people don't. If they get caught for something that they didn't do, they talk about that. And all the reporting we have is that he says almost nothing. He's spending most of his time in jail, News Nation has learned, sleeping. He's not protesting his innocence, that he asked a single question of, has anybody else been arrested? How does that square with the person you knew in terms of acting normal in situations?
Honestly, in my opinion, and after talking with my brother for the past couple of days, it seems almost like he's trying to throw off law enforcement.
Okay, so you'll see the next clip will be Casey's father, actually. So remember, Casey said her brother was friends with Bryan too. They both were. So they interviewed one of the news channels, the local news channels interviewed their father, Casey's father. And he talks about how Bryan was at their house. That's kind of interesting. So here is that.
Kohberger left Washington a grad student and is coming back to the inland Northwest, a suspected murderer. This news came as a shock to people who knew him, and some are now speaking out on changes in his behavior and his personality that pushed them away. Tonight at 6, Esther Bauer has new details from a father who says both his kids grew up with Kohberger. Esther.
Quite a few times, Kohberger was actually in my house, and it's, that's pretty frightening thing to know.
Because Tom Arntz says his kids went to school with Kohberger in Pennsylvania.
He said some things are a little odd with him. He was always like he had to be like the number one person in the room.
Over the years, his kids noticed changes. Tom says he used to be around 300 pounds, then lost a lot of weight, and that wasn't the only difference.
My son said he changed a little bit and he got pretty aggressive with him and mean to him and stuff, and my son broke off relations with him. He just never seen him anymore.
The last time the Arntz family saw him was when Kohberger was working as a security guard at a local school a couple years back.
When we talked to him there, everything seemed, normal. He was polite and everything. It was very, very weird to hear this stuff.
Washington State University confirms he was a PhD student at the time of the alleged murder, and Tom adds he was smart.
Very intelligent, and then, he would explain things in like a really odd way that had to be really sophisticated way of explaining stuff.
There is still so much more to explain and understand in this investigation. It's unsettling for Tom to think about how this person, who they knew for years, could have killed these 4 students.
Just insane.
Who this is going to reach out to, but regarding the case of the 4 Idaho students that were slain and the arrest that was made. I used to be friends with Bryan Kohberger during my middle and high school years. And then before anyone comes at me and says that I'm just running for clout, I'm not. I have pictures that I will show you. I have screenshots that I will show you. I have yearbook pictures that I show you. I went to school with the kid. I was friends with him. I wouldn't make something like this up. I am just in absolute shock right now. I was heading to lunch when my mom called me, and immediately I knew something was off because I have the type of family that we don't call each other. So if someone does call someone, we know something's bad. She called me and asked me about the murders. I didn't know where she was going with it until she said that it was Bryan Kohberger, and naturally I freaked out and called about 8 of my friends. My brother was really good friends with him. My other friend, Brandon, was really good friends with him. I'm going to have a picture of him with him on the green screen as well. I'm shaking still. But anyway, let me show you. This is back. This is Brandon, the one I was just talking about. That's his wife, Brianna, and that's me. This was back in 2017. Obviously, that's Bryan. Still has the dead face that it's the eyes. I don't know. But when I spoke to him back in 2017, he was clean. He was a heavy heroin user back in high school. And it was just nice to see the kid clean up. And at that time, he said he was doing security detail. I believe it was out of school is what he told me. But he seemed like he was better. Obviously, that wasn't true. Here's another picture from a party that we had at Brandon's house. That's Bryan there. He used to be a bigger kid as well. But again, that's him. And then at the same wedding, I'm here, but he's back there. He was sitting at the same table as me and my mother. But he is back there enjoying a drink. I was sitting right next to him. We talked. He seemed fine. My mom sent me the old school yearbook. That was him. Bryan Kohberger, that's him. He went to Pleasant Valley. Graduated with, I think, my friend Christopher, a year younger than me. This is when he nonchalantly decided to make me drive him around the Poconos for heroin, and I had no idea. I thought I was just doing a nice deed because he needed something, and it turns out that he was getting heroin. Sorry, I'm like, my voice is shaking. I might make a part 2. I probably have to. I don't have a 6-minute feature. I only have a 3-minute feature. I also talk really fast, so I'm sorry. More on this. I don't really know what to say in this situation because it's so fucking crazy. I'm not trying to put any names out there. Like, I'm not trying to get like my friends involved, but it's crazy when you sit there and you realize that the person that was in your parents' home, in your friend's home, you were in their car, you were in his house. I knew his mom. She was a substitute teacher at Pleasant Valley. It's crazy to think that. I don't know. It's.
Okay, so I wanted to freeze frame some of this so we could read it. So the gray is him and the blue is her. So he's the gray text and then she's the blue text. So it says, which either, oh, I don't know how you didn't understand that, LOL. Okay, I read it fast. Ah, I got you. I'm so thankful that after everything you still invited me to your party. I will be there for sure if I'm invited for sure. And it says, haha, you're invited, Bryan. It's not a problem. You know I love you guys. Always will, even if we stop talking one day.
Again, he obviously no longer has a Facebook, but they still allow you to filter old messages. Here's something. I invited him to a party back in 2014. He seemed fine. It's crazy just what can switch in someone's brain.
So this is her saying to Bryan, I would like to hand you a big congratulations for lying to me about driving you around. I should have added it up beforehand, but thought I was doing something nice for someone. So thank you. If you would have gotten caught, I would have gotten in trouble just for driving you around, not even knowing why. Needles for your aunt? Wow, really great story. Bye. He says, I'm in rehab. She says, I know that. He says, I'm sorry again.
And after the whole heroin incident, I didn't know that he was literally making me drive to get him heroin until Brandon told me. So I messaged him a pretty rotten message just because I was pissed. I didn't know there was fucking heroin in my car. But this was, again, 2013. I was 2 years graduated from high school. He then said he was in rehab. He would randomly message me after that.
Says, no crap, where at? Says possibly ESU, most likely Centenary in New Jersey, where my sister goes. Criminal justice. You? She says, I've been accepted to different places, but I'm starting out cheap at Northampton. And he says, my rents are trying to push Northampton for me. So his parents, he's saying. She says, it's not that bad. I'd rather save the money and start out with 2 years and transfer later. My mom has been pushing it on me for a while now, too. So basically, yeah, she's just asking, like, where are you going to school, it sounds like. And he says, possibly ESU, most likely Centenary in New Jersey, where my sister goes. Criminal justice, U. So she must be asking what his major was.
This is him mentioning he wanted to study criminal justice. Again, back in 2013, he was already hoping to do that. And then that obviously fell through because he said he went to rehab. But apparently he went back at it. And again, in 2017, that's when it seemed like everything was fine and he was doing great for himself. So it was kind of crazy that this fucking happened. But yeah, this is also talking about, hanging out with Bryan, chilling with them.
So this isn't with Bryan. This is her talking to somebody else about Bryan, it sounds like. So she says, LOL, no, I'm busy all Saturday until the night, unless I convince my mom to let me stay Sunday night again, like I did this past weekend. He says, what'd we do if, per se, I chilled with you Saturday? She says, night? And he says, yeah. I don't know, man. I think Kim will be over. He says, I'll see if I can make arrangements for you, with a heart. So she says, LOL, I mean, Bryan can chill too, if you want. He says, nah, me and Bryan weren't friends for the last 2 months. Now we're acquaintances, kinda. Oh God, what now?
And then Brandon said they're like not friends anymore. And this happened a lot because of what he was doing, his addiction, and he had some anger issues. I know he did kickboxing to kind of help with that, but again, I wish I had more pictures. I'm sure I have plenty from MySpace days, but for some reason I cannot get onto my MySpace. When I click to search, it just gives me like broken photos. And I'm sure I had more pictures with him because, again, I did a lot with him. We hiked a mountain by my parents' house together. He mentioned that in one of the messages I had with him. Again, I'm so sorry if this is really fast. I don't really know what to say. This never happened to me before. I really didn't have old friend of a murderer on my 2022 bingo list. So yeah, that's him.
So someone had commented and said that, what does something that you knew about him 5 to 10 years ago have to do with anything? The point of the matter is the police want anyone who knew him to reach out to try to get an idea of who he was, regardless of if it was 5 to 10 years ago or 3 minutes ago. Like, they want to know. They want to be able to piece it together. And even if it doesn't really help them because it's that long ago, at the end of the day, I knew him. I was friends with him. And I'm not trying to turn this into a whole, I knew him. Oh my God. Nothing like that. I want to be able to get my statement across. I want to be able to show my story, tell my story. I want my friends to be able to tell my story. I want my brother to, my mom to, which, by the way, my mom and my brother both had called the tip line and gave them their statements. I have a whole freaking novel typed out in my freaking email with the screenshots, which are like 25, by the way. I just want to be able to make sure that I don't know how to explain it. I just want to be able to make sure that I can convey what I know. If it helps or if it doesn't. At the end of the day, there are 4 victims who were brutally murdered. Their families, their friends, they want answers, and I have answers. Maybe not of why he did it, but I know who he was, and I just want to be able to, I don't know. And then someone else said I might get subpoenaed because of the video. Fuck it. Send me a subpoena. I'll make my statement. I'll look him dead in the eye and tell him what a piece of shit he is. You can rot in fucking hell. And then, is it only these 4 people that he killed? I don't know. At the end of the day, it's terrifying, and I'm going to need more than melatonin to sleep tonight. Definitely. Beats me because... thankful I invited him to a party in 2014. He's like, I love you guys. Always will, even if we stop talking one.
Tonight, Bryan Kohberger's childhood friend Thomas speaking to ABC News, describing the Idaho murder suspect as mean in high school, saying Bryan was eager to be seen as dominant.
He would just he would grapple me and put me in headlocks and arm bars and stuff like that.
I used to go on night runs with him because I didn't want to go running at night by myself. So I would text him hey, you want to go for a run? We'd go for 6-7 mile runs at night. So when I saw who it was, I was just in complete shock. I'm still kind of shaking knowing about that. It's just unreal to think somebody could actually do that to somebody. It's absolutely mind-boggling. My adrenaline's still kind of running after finding that information out. So just I feel for the families, and I'm just happy justice can be served now. So.
Before his arrest, Bryan Kohberger was studying for a PhD in criminology and was a teaching assistant in the Department of Criminal Justice at Washington State University, roughly 8 miles from the scene of the crimes. Benjamin Roberts took 4 classes with Koberger and thought he was highly intelligent.
He seemed very comfortable around other people. He was fairly quick to offer his opinion and thoughts.
This is out of character for Bryan, these allegations.
I looked it up, I typed, Idaho murders, and then, holy crap, that's Bryan. That's Bryan. I know Bryan, That's wild to me.
This Pennsylvania man has been friends with Koberger since the 8th grade. How did he get started in drugs?
He got in drugs via an acquaintance of his. It was definitely heroin. It was pretty gnarly.
He reveals the ups and downs of Bryan Koberger's life. And we'll talk to a college student who says he saw another side to the criminology student turned accused murderer.
Very intense stare. I remember that. I'll never forget that. Looking right into my soul almost, as we were having this back and forth.
So I looked it up. I typed, Idaho murders, and then, holy crap, that's Bryan. That's Bryan. I know Bryan. That's wild to me. It's a shock, seeing someone you've known on TV.
Jack Bayless met Bryan Koberger in 8th grade when the two of them ran with a group of boys in this neighborhood near Albrightsville, Pennsylvania.
I want to say he wanted to be a cop since he was younger.
What kind of teenager was he?
He was pretty normal. He was definitely heavier set, and that caused issues in school, apparently.
But in high school, dramatic changes washed over Koberger, according to several friends, including Bayless.
I believe it was the weight loss first. And I was, I want to say 14 to maybe 16, in between there was the big weight loss. I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And then it was the drugs.
How did he get started in drugs?
He got in drugs via an acquaintance of his. It was definitely heroin. It was pretty gnarly.
Bayless doesn't know exactly when Koberger got clean.
Last I saw him, he was pretty lucid.
But the two reconnected after Koberger enrolled at DeSales University in Center Valley, right around the corner from Bayless's home. Koberger's major, criminology.
He's always been kind of fascinated with kind of how the brain works and how people think and why they do what they do.
And so my senior year, I ended up in a biology class, which is where I met and interacted with Bryan Koberger.
What were your first impressions of the guy?
Bryan seemed normal enough.
But that opinion did not last for Bernard James, a DeSales film student in 2018 when he attended a class with Koberger.
One of the big parts of that biology class that we were in, we had a group project as a part of our final grade.
With 4 DeSales classmates on the project, Koberger was chosen as team leader. Not surprising for the student DeSales professor Michelle Bolger called brilliant and one of the best students ever, according to an article in the Daily Mail. Dr. Bolger declined to comment to King 5. But to some classmates at the Christian University, Koberger seemed more like a know-it-all.
The way that he came across in his speech, kind of person who has to use big words, the one always raising his hand in class.
And what happened then towards the end of this whole thing?
We're approaching the due date, and I was feeling like I was left out to dry.
Bernard James says Koberger completed the class project without including him, resulting in a failed class in Bernard's final year at DeSales. He confronted Koberger in the university library.
I remember him being very straight-faced, very almost emotionless with this. He kind of a small smile on his face. There's more to him than it seems. Very intense stare. I remember that. I'll never forget that. Looking right into my soul almost, as we were having this back and forth. Manipulative, cold.
Was he witnessing an odd personality trait or something more? After Koberger's arrest, Bernard can't be sure.
I mean, it's not every day you expect to come into contact with someone who's accused of something like that, but I see it in some ways. I see the calculated side of him.
We're talking about 4 vicious stabbings here.
Yeah.
Could your friend have done this?
I hope he didn't do it. I'm a big believer in innocent until proven guilty. So I hope someone I know didn't do that,
Here in Pennsylvania, we've been unable to reach anyone from Koberger's family. A public defender here who represented him during extradition proceedings has said that Koberger looks forward to being exonerated in Idaho.
The Idaho Statesman interviewed 2 classmates, and they indicated that they had several classes with Koberger and explained how Koberger would talk during every class. He would participate. He was very vocal. He was social. Ben Roberts, a criminal justice grad student, said, quote, "He seemed gregarious and outgoing. That was really the only impression that I got. He was making the rounds. He definitely seemed a little more eager than some of the others that were present to go around and introduce himself." Another classmate, who chose to remain anonymous, explained, quote, "Bryan only talked about his interest in forensic psychology. He was an incredibly strong student and talked during class every time. He sat front and center and was not hiding or tucking back in the back. According to this classmate of Koberger's, this social, talkative, energetic guy, quote, became completely silent when it came to discussing the Idaho murders.
I want to bring in someone who knew him, the suspect personally, Rich Pasqua. You worked with him for a period of time. Rich, what can you tell me about the suspect? What was he like?
He was just your average guy. I met him through some friends, and they told me that he was a little weird, and he was a little socially awkward, I guess you could say. But he wasn't a bad guy. He needed a job, so I worked at a pizza shop at that time, and they were hiring. I said, "Yeah, come on in and apply," and he did, and he got the job. So I worked with him for a little bit. But he was quiet, though.
What
He
was
didn't ever come off
conversation like with
violent or
him? What was conversation like with him? Like when you talk with him at work, would he look you in your eyes? Did he have friends? Did he have a girlfriend at the time?
It was so long ago. It was like 2013, but he didn't have a girlfriend. I do remember that. And my wife went to school with him. They graduated together, and she doesn't remember him ever having a girlfriend, and I don't remember him ever having a girlfriend. And he didn't have many friends, so he would do anything to fit in, and would do he just wanted to be liked by everybody. But he wasn't a bad kid. He was all right. And I knew his sister. I went to school with his sister, and I knew his father worked for the school, and I believe his mother did too. But his family, they were all nice people, and his dad was always really nice to me, very polite. But I never thought that he would do something like that.
Good copy. So we've heard from some people that surrounded him that there may have been drug use in his life prior as well. Did you know him to use drugs or anything like that, sir?
Yeah, he did use drugs. That's how I really know him too. He was a big heroin addict, and so was I. I got 6 years clean now. I work in treatment and everything, but back then I was using, and so that's how I know for a fact he was using. I've got high with him a couple times and used with him, and I remember one night we went out and his car broke down, and his dad had to come out, and he got pretty angry. Well, because his car broke down and everything, and we couldn't get what we needed that night. I knew other people that dealt drugs, and we would deliver drugs to him a lot. And so that's when I heard about this case. I haven't heard from him in so long. And then I heard about this, and it said that he was going to college. I said, I haven't heard from him. I guess that's what he's been doing. He must have cleaned up. I know he was in and out of rehab a couple times, but he really did. He cleaned up and was going to college all these years.
Rich, I'm short on time, but I got to ask you one last question. We've heard from people that he had a track record of being inappropriate, borderline offensive to women. Did you ever see that in any of your interactions with him and interactions with women?
Not in my time knowing him. I've never seen him ever act like that towards women. I've never seen him come off that way ever towards anybody.
Yeah. Rich, thank you so much for joining the program. I'm sorry I'm short on time. Hopefully you'll come back.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So this first guy, for some reason, you can't hear what the questions he's being asked. So there's a silent part where he's listening and waiting for the question, and then he answers it, but you can't even hear the person asking him. So I think I'm going to cut out that part. So it might kind of seem odd, like he's answering questions, or where are these questions coming from? It's because there is somebody asking him questions, but it's not on the audio for some reason.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I mean, I was, just sleeping here on the couch in my parents' house, and I woke up to all these tweets that were like, oh, they got the guy. And of course, this has been something that everyone in Pullman has been following, everyone in the whole Pullman, Moscow area. And so I look on my phone and I see the guy's name and I see the picture. And I'm thinking, that looks a lot like my TA who's also named Bryan, but that would be crazy. And so I went and I checked my email, to see the emails I'd had with him, and the name matched and everything. And yeah, it was just like totally jarring, totally shocking to realize that this person that had been, kind of grading my papers was, allegedly this like horrible murderer. Yeah, no, entirely. All our interactions came in the form of the class, and not even like, office hours. Like, it was all within the confines of a lecture hall. He was pretty strict as far as grading goes. When he came into class, he was very, not super mentally present. He would stand up at the front, look at the ground. He had a lot of like boilerplate responses he would give people rather than, maybe something he had thought up on the spot. It seemed like he would be, he'd come in knowing what he was going to say to like most interactions. And then when he would grade your papers, he would be grading you on what he ended up calling like a higher standard. But what it really felt like to us was he was grading us like he would have graded himself as a PhD student. And so that was just kind of like, we were all annoyed by him. And so I knew his name, I knew like, oh, TA Bryan, like he sucks at this. Like he's grading us too harshly. And that was like an annoyance. But obviously beyond that, we just thought he was a little weird and kind of, a bad grader. Yeah. He actually only left me good comments, which is just kind of silly. Like the only ones I could send in were nice ones, but for most people, he was being pretty harsh in the comments. For whatever reason, he was being pretty good to me. Yeah, actually, we had, our professor was big on the idea that like, if we're all going to be attorneys someday, then we have to know how to argue our case. And so he scheduled a day where everyone, came in ready to argue to get their grades up, and he brought in Bryan and he was like, all right, go at him. And he had Bryan stand up and everyone was, like a few people were on his side because they wanted to keep their high grades and not like have questions be cut out or whatever. But for the most part, it was like, half of a 150 person class just asking him all these real critical questions and he would answer. And he'd actually, he tried pretty hard to defend himself, which was the kind of thing that our professor loved. He wanted the like courtroom environment. And so, so there was just a period of class where we were all sort of arguing about this. It wasn't like yelling or anything, but it was certainly conflict, Yeah, we just, it would have been about a month before winter break when like the murders happened. And we didn't obviously build our framework for this around that because we had no reason to connect him to that, at the time. But definitely around then, he started grading everybody just 100s, not like you pretty much, if you turned something in, you were getting high marks, and he stopped leaving notes. It was just, he seemed preoccupied is what I would have said at the time. And now obviously he seems like he was probably pretty preoccupied, but it was, it was much easier. You'd turn in whatever you wanted pretty much. And he was just grading them up and sending them back. Like, yeah, yeah, absolutely. He probably, that I saw, he was always a little bit spotty on whether or not he'd come to class because he had, whatever PhD stuff over the top of it. But the couple times that he did come after or around that time period, I remember him, he had like a little bit more facial hair, just like stubble, but definitely less like well kept than he was. And he was a little quieter. He didn't, he used to stand up at the start of class and like talk about some stuff sometimes. And this time he didn't really do that at all. He was definitely, I think, like the previous like mental preoccupation that we had been noticing where it was like, he didn't really want to be there. That was at like an all-time high. And he just, didn't look like he was doing great.
He was kind of awkward, but I feel like you can't just write someone off as being crazy just because they're a little awkward,
Just months after his graduation from DeSales, Kohberger moved across the country to Washington to begin his PhD studies in criminal justice at Washington State University.
It's crazy because literally days after these murders happened, he brought it up when I saw him in the hallway.
Just across the hall from Kohberger's Pullman, Washington apartment lives Christian Martinez. He says Kohberger's dad approached him early on.
The dad was wanting to introduce me to Bryan, and he said something, I don't remember the exact word he used to describe him, but it was something that was he has a hard time making friends, or he's kind of shy, or something like that.
Martinez tells us Kohberger kept up with the murders and even brought them up as a topic of conversation.
He was like, "Oh, did you hear about these murders that happened?" And it was like so short after they actually happened. Like there was barely any news articles out, so there wasn't much that I could have like read. So I was like, "Yeah, man, that's crazy. Yeah, of course I've heard about him." And he was like, "Yeah, it seems like they don't have any leads." And I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, there's not much about it, you know. There's nothing. I have no details really to say." But yeah, and then he's like, "Yeah, it seems like they think it was a crime of passion." Those were the two things he said, was that they had no leads and they think it was a crime of passion.
On top of that, Kohberger may have had a fascination with death or killing.
One thing that stuck out was it was kind of like on the subject of what it would take to like take someone's life. Like it was kind of like he was trying to see my perspective on, well, I guess taking someone's life.
After the pair were first introduced last summer, Martinez invited Kohberger to a pool party, and they saw each other occasionally after that. At that same party, Zach Cartwright met Kohberger for the first time.
He did seem pretty kind of just socially awkward and kind of hard to carry a conversation with, if I remember correctly. But besides that, he mainly just stood to the side and was really observant, and so much so that based on that one small interaction, he knew exactly who I was maybe a month or so later when I saw him on that hike.
When they crossed paths again, Cartwright says it was strange how quickly Kohberger recognized him.
It was really weird how he approached me and the people that I was with, because he acted kind of like we were best friends, or it was like a reunion or something, and he was really excited to see us, and I had no idea really who he was right at that second.
Those two small interactions proved important enough for Cartwright to be interviewed by the FBI after Kohberger's arrest.
I did speak to the FBI at one point. I do believe that they spoke to a lot of people that were at that party. It may be because that was one of his very first times, if not his first time in Moscow.
Martinez and his wife were also interviewed by the FBI. He tells us his wife always felt something was off with the now suspected murderer.
She didn't have a good feeling about him, because every time I would like tell her like, I'm gonna invite Bryan, because he didn't have any friends. I was trying to bring him out and maybe meet people he can, relate to. But she was always like, "No, please don't." Like, there was just something about him that she didn't like.
In recalling their conversations after Kohberger's arrest, some key points stick out.
I guess looking back, it's kind of funny because he was talking about he was talking about genealogy, because I was talking about the 23andMe, because my sister had just did all that. And then he brought up something similar in his studies that had to do with like being able to catch criminals because of their relatives' DNA, which is, I guess, how he got caught up in his mix.
The probable cause affidavit released after Kohberger's arrest revealed a knife sheath was left behind at the crime scene, containing a single source of male DNA. When compared with DNA recovered from the trash at Kohberger's parents' home, it proved to be a near-perfect match. When the FBI interviewed Martinez, they asked whether he had ever seen Kohberger with a similar weapon.
They just asked about, like, if he had a knife on him or anything like that. If I ever noticed him with a knife. I didn't. He never had anything on him like that.
When Thanksgiving approached less than 2 weeks after the murders, Moscow police announced their investigation would continue through the holiday.
I want to assure you, first off, that the loss of Xana, Kaylee, Madison, and Ethan remains the highest priority for the Moscow Police Department. We will continue putting all of our resources into investigating and solving these murders. Investigators are prepared to work through the Thanksgiving holiday to continue their efforts.
As local, state, and federal police continued on in the early stages of the investigation, Kohberger texted Martinez on Thanksgiving, reading, quote, "Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family."
It kind of made me feel bad because me and my wife were talking and like how I was like one of the people that he made friends with. And then it kind of made me feel bad, like, I don't know. What if it would have made a difference that I had been able to like meet up with him the times that I could have? Like maybe that would have changed anything if it would have, but I don't know.
According to court documents, investigators believe the murders happened just 11 days before Kohberger sent Martinez that Thanksgiving text between 4 and 4:25 a.m. A white suspect vehicle was seen near the home at that time and multiple times after. Investigators later determined it was a 2011 to 2016 Hyundai Elantra. Weeks after the murders, Moscow police put out photos of an Elantra, saying it was a vehicle of interest. The following week, Kohberger was behind the wheel of his white Hyundai Elantra when he was pulled over by police.
So you're coming from Washington State University? And you're going where? Oh. You're going to be going to Pennsylvania. Oh, okay.
Kohberger was actually stopped twice in Indiana, about 10 minutes apart, as he drove cross-country with his father from Washington to Pennsylvania for his winter break. Both times, he was stopped for following another vehicle too closely. When the Pennsylvania search warrant was executed at Kohberger's parents' home, investigators recovered multiple items from the vehicle, including hiking boots, a shovel, goggles, and a wrench. Court documents also show one of the surviving roommates saw the suspect the night of the murders, noting he was 5'10" or taller with bushy eyebrows. Martinez agrees he had a memorable look.
Like every time I would talk to him, my wife describes it as a death stare. And it kind of is you make eye contact with people, but you're not constantly just staring at him. He would be constantly staring at me, he's just trying to analyze me. But that was a feeling I would get.
Dana Kennedy is a senior reporter for the New York Post, and she's live with me now. Dana, you were able to speak with the aunt of this suspect, of Bryan Christopher Kohberger, today. Welcome. And what did the aunt tell you?
I've actually spoke to two of them, and they were both married to brothers of Michael Kohberger, that's the murder suspect's father. And the one aunt that I spoke to, who a lot of them are in the Las Vegas area, and she said the last time she saw Bryan and his father Michael was about 4 years ago at a funeral out in the Nevada area. And she said that Bryan's affect in general, it wasn't as if he came off, of course, as somebody seemingly outwardly crazy, but she said she noticed that he had a really weird food fetish. And she said it went beyond being vegan. He required his aunt and uncle to buy brand new pots and pans for him to eat out of because he refused to eat from anything that had meat ever cooked in it. And she said it seemed to be an OCD type of situation. She said otherwise he didn't seem that odd, but I spoke to another aunt by marriage who said that the murder suspect's father, Michael, came from a fairly big family that she said lived very close to the edge. They didn't pay a lot of attention to rules. They were a little bit wild. A couple of the uncles of the murder suspect, she said, served time in jail, but for very minor offenses like gambling or things like that. But I got this sense from both these aunts that the family was pretty odd. And the father's family originally comes from Brooklyn. They later all migrated out to Vegas. And Bryan's father, Michael, is the one that was kind of estranged from the rest of his siblings. And I also heard that he could be kind of difficult with his siblings. And I'm talking now again about the murder suspect's father.
Were they surprised? I mean, these anecdotes are remarkable, but what about their affectation? Were they shocked, dismayed, upset, not surprised? How do they feel about the fact that the person the entire country has been looking for ended up being their family member? How surprised were they about this news that he's the suspect?
Not as surprised as you would think. The one aunt, the one that saw him a few years ago and not talked about his food fetish, said she just heard about it. But she was incredibly calm. She is no longer married to the brother, so perhaps the fact that they're not specifically legally in the family anymore gives them some detachment. The other aunt, I'm the one that broke the news to her, and she was completely matter of fact and calm about the whole thing. They didn't want their names used, which is understandable. But no, I mean, I think if it were anyone I'd known, even if it wasn't a relative, I'd be shocked to my core. They did not seem to be that way to me.
Okay, so I'm going to read you this article. There's a couple news sources that did an article on this, but I'm just going to read you the one from Independent. Bryan Kohberger's sister searched his car for evidence before police swooped in. So it was from Dateline, NBC's Dateline. Says Bryan Kohberger's sister feared that her brother was involved in the stabbings of 4 University of Idaho students before police swooped on their parents' home and arrested him for the murder, according to a bombshell report. Sources told NBC that one of the accused killer's older siblings grew increasingly suspicious of her brother and his behavior when the family gathered to spend the holidays together. Her suspicions were so great that at one point several family members searched Mr. Kohberger's white Hyundai Elantra for possible evidence of the crime, they said. In mid-December, Mr. Kohberger, a 28-year-old criminology PhD student at WSU, embarked on a cross-country trip with his father from his student rental home in Pullman, Washington, back to the family home in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, to spend the holidays together. But during his time at home, his family members noticed that he was behaving somewhat bizarrely. The source said that Mr. Kohberger was constantly wearing latex gloves, including inside their own home. One of his 2 older sisters began to wonder if he could have played a part in the murders, and at one point she raised her concerns with her other family members. She loudly pointed out that at the time of the murders, her brother was living just a few miles from the crime scene and that he drove a white Hyundai Elantra, the make and color of the vehicle at the center of the investigation. Along with his bizarre tendency to wear his latex gloves at all time, she believed that the family should consider that Mr. Kohberger might have killed the 4 victims, the source said. Mr. Kohberger's father allegedly defended his son and insisted he could not have been involved, but the concerns were clearly big enough for several of the family members to reportedly decide to search the 28-year-old's vehicle to look for possible evidence. By that point, police said Mr. Kohberger had already been spotted cleaning his car out with bleach, and so the family members didn't find anything of note, the source said. It is not clear if Mr. Kohberger was aware of his family members' suspicions that he could have been behind the murders, or what prior behavior may have led his own sister to suspect him capable of carrying out such a brutal crime. Soon after, in the early hours of December 30th, law enforcement descended on the family home and arrested him for the murders. At the time of his arrest, the source said Mr. Kohberger was wide awake, standing in the kitchen wearing latex gloves and putting his personal trash in plastic bags to take it out to a neighbor's trash can.
I'm sure there's statistics out there of, many people pass by a murderer, many people know a murderer. Well, I don't. It's very concerning, and it's very eerie and creepy as well.
It's crazy because literally days after these murders happened, he brought it up when I saw him in the hallway.
It's almost too good to be true, unless this guy was miraculously set up, which is like a 1 in a billion chance. No one cares enough about Bryan Kohberger to set him up.
Down a winding tree-lined road on the outskirts of the valley is DeSales University, a private Catholic school with less than 5,000 total students.
It's a small school. It's not like it's a Penn State or a Pitt or a Temple. It's a very small school in a cornfield. So if you go there, you know most of the people within your study and pretty much everyone that goes to the school. And he was not known. At that time, I would have never said, oh yeah, that guy would do something like this. He may have been a little odd or a little off, but other than that, you'd never expect someone to be allegedly part of a quadruple homicide, ever.
Ferraro, who graduated from DeSales with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, is a self-proclaimed true crime junkie.
I was following it day one because who hears about 4 college students that are unfortunately murdered, and how do you not want to keep up with that? So I got on TikTok, YouTube, Google, and I vigorously kept up with this case. And that's why it's shocking to me, because this guy was such a normal dude, average Joe type person. You would never, you don't know what's under people's skin. God forbid if he didn't do it, great. But all the signs point to that he did. He was new, and I said, hey buddy, do you want to be my lab partner? And that's pretty much what was left, so I took him. And it ended up working out very well.
As a commuter student, Kohberger came and went from campus during his undergraduate psychology studies. Ferraro says he kept to himself and didn't show any outward signs of something more menacing.
It's not always the creepy guy with glasses and oily hair and creeping around the corner. It's sometimes just that average Joe that on the inside you have no idea what he looks like, but on the outside he may just seem like a normal person, much like Bryan Kohberger did. I really don't think that there's too many outward telltale signs of someone committing a crime. I feel like it's all mostly internal. which goes back to the blank slate theory and basically how you're raised, what you're exposed to as a child, what your genetics are. That would be predisposition. So like some things you're predisposed to do in life, that's just unfortunate. Your genetics dictate you will be one way. However, the blank slate theory says that dependent on your situation and who you grew up with, what kind of friends you have, how many friends you have, do you have a lover, all these things in combination kind of make you who you are. So it's a combination of both, in my opinion. I'm not a professional. You got to ask Catherine Ramsland.
As a graduate student at DeSales, Kohberger majored in criminal justice. That means both he and Ferraro studied under legendary forensic psychologist Dr. Catherine Ramsland. We reached out to Ramsland for this story and were told via email, quote, "I'm making no statements about Bryan Kohberger and will not be interviewed for any stories that feature him." But months before Kohberger's arrest, Ramsland appeared on Law and Crime Network's podcast, Cocktails and Cocktails.
Have I come face to face with psychopaths? Absolutely. The coldness, the lack of remorse, definitely. So some people call that evil, but we are finding that it might very well be a brain disorder.
In the interview, given just 7 months before the University of Idaho murders, Ramsland explained the workings of a psychopath's mind.
The brains of what we call primary psychopaths, who seem to be born with this brain disconnect, are definitely different. And it allows them to be better predators if that's what they choose to be. Not all psychopaths are criminals. Not all psychopaths are murderers, but if they choose that, it allows them to be very effective at it because they really don't have any remorse over what they're doing, and they really can be very calculated. They tend to be very reward driven.
But according to forensic psychologist Dr. John Delatorre, we can't yet label Kohberger as a psychopath or even a serial killer.
Even if he was a serial, even if he does have that, what actually happened was that he was a mass killer. Right, that because there was 3+, sometimes it's 4+, depending on what law enforcement agency that you ask. Whoever did this should actually be considered a mass killer. But that doesn't take away from the possibility that they are also a serial killer.
We can't even confirm Ferraro's blank slate theory.
The science has suggested that when we're born, we actually do have coding, right? We do have ways in which we are going to be perceiving the world around us. Now, of course, external influences change who we are and how we're going to respond to those things. But we're not necessarily a blank slate.
But according to Ramsland, a motive may be hard to pin down.
They have a variety of motives, but their personalities tend to have that rigidity and that inability to go with life's hard knocks and to believe that they're entitled to more and that they need to punish people for them not getting what they think they deserve.
Ferraro has his own theory about a motive.
I don't see this as this grandiose thing where he was trying to get away with it. I think he had this compulsion, this need, this necessity to do it, and he's probably always wanted to do it and finally said, F it, I'm going to do it.
At least part of Ferraro's theory seems to be accurate. Kohberger had no run-ins with the law while in the Lehigh Valley.
We had no indication he was here at all. We had no indication he had any interaction with law enforcement at all.
After news broke of his arrest, Northampton County District Attorney Terry Houck says his team reviewed area cold cases for a possible link to Kohberger.
When you have somebody that might have serial attached to their name, you just want to make a check to see if there's any connection since he had contact with the county, and there was none here in Northampton County.
Similar investigations were also conducted in neighboring Lehigh County. We reached out to District Attorney Jim Martin, who declined an interview. But while sitting down with Houck, we learned news of Kohberger's arrest came as a shock for the community.
Obviously, it's the reaction that everybody has. It's it's like a close to home thing, because then you're watching people are posting Facebook pictures of him on campus, on some campus close by or something like that.
One such campus is Northampton Community College, where Kohberger made the dean's list and later received an Associate of Arts and Psychology degree in 2018, before his time at DeSales. Kohberger himself commuted about 50 miles from Albrightsville to the college's Bethlehem campus while studying for his degree. Law and Crime Network reached out to NCC for this story to learn more about Kohberger's time at the school. The senior director of marketing and communications replied in part, quote, "This isn't something we'd like to pursue at the moment, and we'll be in touch should anything change." According to multiple reports, Koberger frequented the brewery Seven Sirens while he attended college in the area. According to the interviews, Koberger made multiple women uncomfortable, so much so that a record of his interactions was kept, noting that he made staff concerned about his strange behavior. We reached out to the Seven Sirens owner multiple times and never received a response. But Delatorre says labeling Koberger as a killer because of these alleged interactions may be a rush to judgment.
They may be engaging in that fundamental attribution error where they're linking all of these things to describe who he is as a person, forgetting that there are many different external influences, that it's certainly possible that all of this stuff, that he was being reactionary. And I think that that's also part of, if he did do this, that reactionary aspect is kind of maybe what compelled him to engage in this particular act.
But could Koberger's connection to criminal justice have played a role in the murders?
The course that I took that stands out is psychological sleuthing, where you basically enter the mind of a killer. She would give you sheets, and basically the sheets would denote and detail a crime. However, you wouldn't know who did what per se or where this was, but you'd have to, it was a group thing, so you'd get partnered up or in groups, and you would go through these activities and basically come up with a theory or a thesis and then challenge it to Dr. Ramsland.
DeSales boasts a robust criminal justice program, promoting hands-on training and courses taught by renowned professors.
They have an entire house, they call it the crime scene house, that is used for simulations for crime scene investigation or collecting evidence or crime scene photography or responding to other emergencies.
But according to court documents, Koberger's criminal justice studies were important enough for detectives to investigate, recovering a criminal psychology book and DeSales University documents from his parents' home when a search warrant was executed.
The Master of Arts in Criminal Justice is awarded to Carlina Kemery. Jenna Cook. Bryan Koberger.
We reached out to Koberger's entire criminal justice graduating class for this story, but his classmates either didn't reply or denied our request for an interview. One classmate told us via text that DeSales University, quote, sent a general communication that suggested everything go through the university as to be respectful of the ongoing situation. The Associate Vice President of Marketing and Communications told us via phone the school did not discourage students to speak with the media, but that she was available to assist in media requests on a case-by-case basis. The school's statement via email recapped Koberger's majors, the years he completed each program, and confirmed he was always a commuter student.
DeSales is just such a close-knit and heartfelt community. Like I said, everybody knows each other. And the fact that really no one knows about this guy, he went in and out.
It's a common theme in Koberger's past, leaving behind little clues about his isolated personality. Multiple people who knew Koberger tell us he was strange but hardly memorable.
Now this is 26-year-old Haley Willett, and she told the Daily Beast that she went on a date with Koberger in 2015 when she was in college. They met on Tinder, they went to the movies, and then after the movies, according to her, things got weird. She says he drove her back to her dorm, and she says, quote, he started being really pushy about coming up to her room, so she lets him up and said that while he was, quote, very polite and nice on the date, he, quote, completely changed gears. She said, quote, definitely felt uncomfortable when he decided he needed to wait outside of the bathroom for me. So she ends up pretending like she's throwing up in the bathroom, and he ultimately leaves. And then later on in the night, he messages her that she has good birthing hips, and they never speak again.
I was so lucky that I was never raped by anyone I went on a Tinder date with. However, it could have been me. I could have been the one hurt. I could have been killed. I could have been raped. And I did not take any precautions to prevent that from happening to me. So I am very fortunate that none of that happened to me.
Obviously, her account is eerie, and she describes very odd behavior. And look, I don't think that this is someone who would testify in Koberger's trial. I don't think that what she has to say is particularly relevant that ties to the killings. Why this is interesting is because it goes back to Koberger's psyche. You see, according to reporting by several outlets, Koberger was bullied in high school by girls and that he would act creepy towards women. In fact, NBC News reported that according to the owner of a brewery, which Koberger had frequented, female employees would complain about him. He would sit by himself and he would observe and he would watch and he would ask women who were at the bar who they were there with and where they lived. And if they refused to engage with him, he would allegedly get visibly upset.
Guys, what's going on? Josh Ferraro here. I went to college with Bryan Koberger. I've been looking at his picture all day. I've been saying the name all day in my head. And I was like, I know this guy. I know this guy. And then he went to DeSales University. I'm like, I know I had a class with him. I know it. I know it. The name sounds so familiar. And he looked very familiar, but I couldn't put a point on it. And he lost so much weight. When I knew him, he was a pudgy guy. He was really friendly. He led my biology project at DeSales University. And he was a pretty smart guy. And he was interested in criminal justice, and I remember having classes with him, and for this guy to do that is beyond me. I mean, he was a really nice guy, and he does not look like that nice guy anymore. I mean, the guy that I'm seeing on the news looks like a cold-blooded killer. The guy that I went to college with, that dude was nice. He was a nice guy. We studied criminal justice together. He was a really nice guy, and I'm devastated and heartbroken that I knew this guy and that he did this. I'm devastated for those families. I never thought that it would be someone close to home from the Lehigh Valley at DeSales University. And here is the biology project from 2018. We were studying Daphnia. And there he is, and he led this project. 11/16/18. Now, I want to make it clear. This was not a close friend. This was a guy I did a project with, and my first impression of him was he's a little odd, but he's a nice guy. You know, does not stand out. But, you know, he blended in. Like, he was a pretty normal guy. And he does not look like a normal guy now. He looks so skinny and so threatening. I'm shocked. I am completely shocked. But rotten hell if it was you. So, that's what I have to say. Hey guys, how we doing? Josh Ferraro here. I just want to start off by giving my deepest condolences to the victims and their families, that being Ethan, Maddie, Zaina, and Kaylee. It should have never happened. I did go to college with Bryan Koberger. Here's the science project. It's all about Daphnia magnia and how, if they were exposed to hot water or cold water, would they survive? What was their heart rate? How did it affect them? This was a picture I took. And I actually had to tell Bryan to stop laughing and to start being serious. You know, now that I've got a chance to kind of calm down and collect my wits about me, I was a criminal justice major at DeSales as well. I studied under Kathleen Ramsland as well. We took a really interesting class there called psychological sleuthing, where you basically enter the mind of a killer and you have to decipher how that crime happened based off minute clues that Dr. Ramsland would give you. And they were really fun and they were really interesting. That was probably my favorite class, psychological sleuthing. My moniker, psychological sleuth. Theorizing how things are done is very interesting. Profiling is very interesting. And I made a profile December 19th that fixed Bryan's exactly. Somewhat of a loner, not very good with women, says hateful comments about women, calls women hurtful things, gives off creepy vibes at bars. So I made this profile December 9th. It's already on my page if you want to check it out. But it seems to me, through all his struggles in life, he wanted to go out to Washington State and reinvent himself and try to become a different person, or at least ascend to a higher status where he could attract more women, i.e. a doctorate in criminal justice, because he didn't have anything else going for him. So perhaps his intelligence could finally bag him a woman. Clearly that didn't happen. Looks aren't enough. Intelligence is enough. You need charisma. You need to be gentle. You need to be kind. You need to be a gentleman. And with everything coming out, it doesn't seem he was any of those things. I only knew him on an intellectual level. We worked well together on our project. It was him and I, 2 others. We are the only ones who did any work. It was a very long project, very tedious, and he was great on an intellectual level with a guy, being myself. Guys, you need to be vigilant about guys that you know that are hateful towards women. It's easy to pick up the signs. It's easy to be aware. It's easy to be perspicacious. Be safe out there, people. Please. Happy holidays.
And by the way, Anjanette Levy, my co-host here on Sidebar, actually spoke with another one of Kohberger's neighbors too.
Did you ever hear anything up there or anything like that?
Yeah, we heard, we heard loud sounds during the night.
Yeah.
Many times.
Yeah.
Not just once. And so it seemed like he's a night person, not do a lot of things during the day, but during night.
Yeah. Right.
To like clean the floor sometimes, vacuum. It's very loud sound.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's that's the thing, I keep telling the journalists and reporters that is what we heard from the upstairs.
Yeah. But it was just, he was a night person vacuuming or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even sometimes like in the bathroom wash very late. It's not like what regular time.
Yeah.
Very late night we're doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So we got stuff, and many times.
Did you ever ask him to quiet down or anything? Or?
I actually wanted, but I didn't try.
Yeah.
Once when I met him, we just say hello. I just want to say, could you please keep it quiet because we work out during night and kids. But I didn't do that. I think maybe because he just moved in at August, maybe he need time to get used to it.
Sure.
Says the neighbor, who is a woman, told the news outlet that she always heard Kohberger up late at night since he moved into the complex in August. He's normally a very late night person, going to the bathroom and vacuuming at 1 or 12 in the morning. She said, I have kids, so sometimes I thought of speaking to him or complaining, but never did. It seemed like he never slept because he was always doing something all night. While Kohberger was never talkative with his neighbors, he occasionally greeted others in passing. She recalled him bringing a woman home with him one night and hearing them talk through the walls of the complex. The alleged killer also brought home a woman with him in his white car, but the two immediately parted ways when he parked, according to the neighbor. Kohberger had continued to serve as a teacher's assistant at the university before driving his white Hyundai Elantra across the country in the days before, with suspicious cops hot on his trail. His father, who is not said to be a suspect, had flown to Idaho to make the 2,500-mile drive with his son after Kohberger completed his first semester of the PhD program at the university, the suspect's lawyer said. Kohberger was described as super awkward and a little off by students in the criminal justice and criminology department. Did not change his routine or behavior in weeks following the murders, Fox reported. Cops had homed in on DNA evidence in Kohberger's car, which was seen near the site of the gruesome murders, to link the suspect to the crime. The undisclosed forensic evidence was linked to the suspect after it was run through a public database, two law enforcement sources told the network Saturday. They tracked the grad student for 4 days before making an arrest while it worked with local law enforcement to develop enough probable cause to obtain a warrant, the source said. Despite reportedly wearing gloves while shopping and adopting a business-as-usual routine in the classroom, Kohberger's arrogance may have created a DNA trail that led police to the suspect, experts believe. If somebody like this was really a student of criminal justice and criminology, then he would understand certain things like Locard's exchange principle. Professor Joseph Giacalone, a retired NYPD detective sergeant who teaches at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, told the Daily Beast, The principle he referred to is a forensic theory that states every contact leaves a trace. It shows you the arrogance of people like him, where he thinks he's smarter than the cops because he read something in a book, Giacalone reportedly said. At the end of the day, experience trumps academics every day of the week and twice on Sunday. It will be really interesting to find out as we go if he came prepared, added the expert. Did he wear gloves, a Tyvek suit? What was he doing to not get caught? Was he covering his hair? Did he wear booties over his shoes, knowing that he was going to be stepping in a lot of blood? Those are behavioral aspects where prosecutors can say this was well thought out and planned. The suspect's educational track has led some to speculate if he was studying to be able to become a better violent criminal, which Giacalone reportedly said was possible but rare. In the spring, Koberger had reportedly asked for volunteers to speak about their most recent criminal offense and thoughts and feelings throughout the experience as part of his research. At Pleasant Valley High School in Pennsylvania a decade ago, where the suspect had recently worked as a part-time security guard, Koberger had been mocked by classmates for being socially inept and overweight. It was bad, former classmate Sarah Healy told the outlet, explaining that some girls in her class would throw things at him. Wow. There was definitely something off about him. Like, we couldn't tell exactly what it was. It was just weird. But Bryan was bullied a lot, and I never got a chance to say something to defend him because he would always run away. The suspect then shed weight before his senior year and became an aggressive bully himself by the end of high school, a former friend said. The once overweight teen had developed a very, very weird eating habits, his one-time aunt told the Post Friday. It was above and beyond vegan, said the woman, who was once married into his family and wished to remain anonymous. His aunt and uncle had to buy new pots and pans because he would not eat from anything that had ever had meat cooked in them. He seemed very OCD. Koberger also had made creepy comments to female staff at a brewery near his hometown and once called a coworker of BITCH for rejecting his advances. Family members of the victims told the Post Friday that his arrest had brought them a level of comfort. Of course, we're relieved, said Cheryl Gonsalves, Kaylee's mother. This is what we wanted. We wanted him caught, and now we want justice. Okay, so here's an article where somebody that knew Bryan actually in high school talked a little bit about it, his experience with him. So it says, a Bryan Koberger was also listed online as studying psychology in 2018 at Northampton Community College in Albrightsville, where he was a member of Psi Beta and got involved in raising awareness of hidden disabilities. He was also employed as a part-time school security officer by the Pleasant Valley School District for several years until last year. Nick McLaughlin, 26, who was friends with Koberger in high school and vocational school and had been following the Moscow murders, told the Daily Beast he was floored to see Koberger had been arrested. He described Koberger as a down-to-earth member of his friend group who was overweight when they graduated junior year, but at the start of senior year, Koberger was thinner than a rail and turned aggressive, he said. He also picked up a new hobby, taking boxing classes. He always wanted to fight somebody. He was bullying people. We started cutting him off from our friend group because he was 100% a different person, McLaughlin said. Asked what might have contributed to the change that summer, McLaughlin said, "We have no idea." McLaughlin went on to say that he and Koberger would spend half the school day at Pleasant Valley High before heading to Monroe County Vocational School, where they took classes related to heating and air conditioning work. He said Koberger also took criminal justice courses to potentially become a cop. McLaughlin said the friendship ended when Koberger began putting moves on his girlfriend. He was like reaching out to her saying, "I can get us a bottle and we hang out tonight." Okay, so somebody posted this. So it says, "This is crazy and really sad in all honesty. Roll and I were friends with Bryan until he started doing things that were way beyond underage drinking and having normal teen fun. It sucks for everyone. I do hope justice is served. No doubt, but I just wish it would have ended differently." Breaking news, 28-year-old suspect arrested in Idaho murders. Bryan Koberger was identified as a suspect accused in stabbing deaths of 4 University of Idaho students. So somebody's just posting this that knew him and with some pictures to show, kind of prove that they know him, I guess. Okay, so it says Benjamin Roberts was in 4 classes with Koberger at Washington State. Roberts spoke with 48 Hours correspondent Peter Van Sant for a report on this case titled Idaho Students Murder. So it's airing January 7th at 10/9 Central at CBS. Streaming on Paramount to watch it. Roberts told Van Sant that Koberger seemed comfortable around other people. He was very quick to offer his opinion and thoughts. Roberts also says Koberger appeared to be highly intelligent. He would describe things in the most complicated, perhaps academic way possible, said Roberts. Van Stant asks, trying to impress people? It was like he was trying to convince people that he knew what he was talking about, replied Roberts. This is out of character for Bryan, these allegations, said Monroe County Public Defender Jason Labar, who represented Koberger at his extradition hearing in Pennsylvania. Labar has spent time with Koberger's parents and 2 older sisters and says the family wants the public to know that Bryan is a caring son and brother, that he's responsible, that he is devoted to them. Wait, what? That he's responsible, that he's devoted to them. Oh, she's saying, oh, I see. I was thinking like the responsible for the murder. Okay, that he's just responsible and he's devoted to them. 2 high school friends of Bryan Koberger's, Casey Arntz and a young woman named Bree, who asked to have her last name kept private, agreed to talk to 48 hours. The women say Koberger was overweight and was bullied a lot in high school until his senior year when he lost about 100 pounds. Casey Arntz said he was rail thin, and it was after that weight loss that a lot of people noticed a huge switch. Arntz said her brother, who was also friends with Koberger, claims he was bullied by him. When Bryan would get angry with him, he would gaslight him and get physically aggressive, she said, and added that Koberger would put her brother in chokeholds. Bree claims that Bryan started using heroin. You just saw him becoming more self-destructive, she said. He really stayed secluded. So both Bree and Casey Arntz say years after graduating high school, it appeared as if Koberger was sober and getting his life together. He was attending Pennsylvania's Northampton Community College and working security for the Pleasant Valley School District. He was telling me that he wanted to get sober and that he was getting sober, says Bree, and he wanted to let me know. I'm going to do better. I'm going to be better. Oh, really? Being better is freaking murdering people? So Bryan Koberger's at a friend's wedding in 2017. The last time Casey saw Koberger was in 2017 at a friend's wedding. And I gave him a hug and I said, "You look so good. I'm so proud of you." Both Bree and Casey say it appeared that Koberger had a new focus, his studies in criminology. His goal was just to change the world for the good around him. He wanted to do something that impacted people in a good way, says Bree. People were not his strong suit, she added. And I think through his criminology studies, he was really trying to understand humans and trying to understand himself. In the fall of 2022, investigators say Koberger applied for an internship with the Pullman Police Department in Washington State. In an essay, he wrote that he had interest in assisting rural law enforcement agencies with how to better collect and analyze technological data in public safety operations. Now Bree, like many who knew him, struggles to connect the person they once knew to his unspeakable crime. Where did it go wrong? What happened? Why didn't I see it? So this is that Bryan Koberger for next class. So he writes, "Good morning, everybody. For next class, be sure that you review the syllabus section 1 through 8 of Dobbs versus Jackson. Of course, you may read it further if you choose." And then somebody commented, "Did you all ever mention the Idaho case in class for any reason? That's so wild." And then somebody says, "Yes, we brought it up quite a bit, mostly because it was a popular case in criminal justice. Also, U of I is like 10 minutes from WSU. Oh, University of Idaho is like 10 minutes from WSU campus. That's insane. That's insane. Oh my God, to know the TA was the perpetrator. I can't even imagine how you're feeling." And it says, "I would have fully my pants upon finding out if I were you. This is wild. So disturbing how he just seemed to go on life as normal after his heinous crimes. My final paper about my passion for crime J and putting murderers behind bars was graded December 16th by him. I got 100%. Wow. How weird." So I generally wonder how many people I've walked past in life that have murdered someone and never got caught. And then somebody says, did he make you guys analyze his crime? Did he make comments about the murderer? So no comments, but he graded our weekly questions, asked one question and responded to 2 people. The week after, all the questions were about the murders and theories. Okay, so I'm going to read a part of the Seattle Times article about Koberger. It says, Koberger, 28, was a graduate student in criminal justice at the Pullman campus and lived at an apartment complex in Pullman, the Moscow Police Department confirmed at a Friday news conference. He attended classes and finished the semester at WSU after the slayings, a former classmate on Friday told the Seattle Times. B.K. Norton in the criminal justice graduate program at WSU in Pullman, along with Koberger, said they were in all 4 classes with him last semester. Koberger was in the class and finished the semester after the killings happened, Norton said. Wow. Okay, guys, that's all I have for you on this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.